elevationism is unique to your personal journey. We don't tell you how to go down that journey. We don't tell you when to smoke, how to consume, whether it's smoking, eating it, vaping it. We don't tell you how often. We don't tell you which God to pray to. We don't even tell you, what makes us unique as a religion is that we don't pretend to know the answers to life's great questions.
It's going to be a really neat behind the scenes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird.
Because something always magical happens.
Wait, what? Did you just make that up? Hey, it's Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert. Listen each week as I talk with someone new. The topics are as ADD as I am, but they'll inspire you to stay curious and grow.
Big thanks to our location sponsor, the UWF Historic Trust. Hey, Curiositors, it's me, Meredith. When you think of the church, what do you think of? If you're like many living in the West, you think of the Christian church. And if you were to light up a joint in a Christian church, or even talk openly about using cannabis while in church, it's safe to say you would, at minimum, catch some side eye. That, of course, is why I knew I had to make this episode. The paradox of a church of cannabis, it had my name written all over it. They might have well have just sent me a letter in the mail inviting themselves on the show. They, of course, did not do that, but I am glad that they answered my email. If you're a loyal listener, you already know the role paradox plays in personal development, and I thank you for tuning in each week to get your dose of it. And if you're new here, I am so glad you're here. I started this podcast as a project to inspire people to choose curiosity over judgment. Each guest brings a personal development opportunity along with their story so you can stay curious and grow. There's no specific order to listen to episodes, so just, have a look around and hit play on whatever grabs your attention. All right, enjoy the show. Alexa, what is the Church of Cannabis? That's probably nothing you'd ever imagine yourself asking your smart speaker, and yet, here we are. Cannabis has been used in spiritual practices for thousands of years. But in our modern age, cannabis church, it feels like an excuse to smoke weed. My next guest became a marijuana advocate when a parody song that he wrote about the legalization of marijuana was put on the front page of a website for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. He later co-founded the International Church of Cannabis in Denver, Colorado on 4/20/17. Its 15,000 members are not united by a singular God or anything like that. They actually categorize themselves as elevationists who use cannabis to elevate their lives. Today, he's going to give us a behind-the-scenes look at the congregation communing on the holy sacrament of weed and how it can be used as a spiritual tool. Cannabis capitalist, pot pastor, DARE program graduate, Steve Berke. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. That was such an NPR beautiful intro to what we're doing. So that's pretty funny.
Well, I know we just met, but I am a lady of paradoxes. So, welcome to Meredith. This is what you get.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to the interview.
Well, I really love your accolades because they are also so paradoxical. We have, stand-up comedian, former pro tennis player, two-time Miami Beach mayoral candidate, owner of a digital media company, YouTuber, reality TV star, rapper, son of doctors, cannabis advocate. But of all these titles, pothead is not really one of them. So why not?
Well, I don't know. My mom might argue with you. She loves throwing that term at me all the time. But yeah, I think not boring would be the way I would have it on my tombstone. I never tried to go down the traditional path, and here we are.
I like not boring. Is it true that the first time that you ever smoked weed was with Richard Branson on his private island?
The first time I smoked a spliff, which was actually the first time I smoked tobacco or marijuana, was with Sir Richard Branson on Necker Island. And at the time, I was still, in my head, a pro tennis player and still kind of looked down at people who used cannabis. So that experience, being with my entrepreneurial hero and smoking publicly with a bunch of people in a sort of celebratory fashion, did wonders to break the taboo of cannabis use in my head.
It's those paradoxes that really, I think, give us a better perspective, which is actually what this show is all about, is expanding your perspective through curiosity and not putting people in a very limited box.
And it's funny because now in hindsight, a lot of my role models in tennis, I found out later, were regular cannabis users. So people that I thought were so serious and so professional in their careers actually were regularly using cannabis just in the closet, because, in the late 90s, early 2000s, very few people were in public, admitting that they were cannabis users.
That's so true. And that's what I have found too, is not everyone that looks a certain way is a pothead, and not everyone that, you just never know what's going on behind the scenes. So it's better to ask questions than just assume. And some people use it, medicinally. And I think that's part of your story as well. What was the bridge between smoking with Richard Branson on TV to exploring cannabis as a pain management tool?
Yeah, I definitely was a medical patient first, then activist, then recreational user. I had a severe back injury that ended my tennis career in 2003, 2004. And, it was 2 years of not being able to sleep through the night without pain that, got me experimenting with cannabis for pain management. And, I'd gone through all the traditional paths. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm the son of two doctors. So I had the epidural injections. I had the facet injections. I went as far as acupuncture and chiropractors, and nothing really helped. And I didn't want to develop an addiction to opioids and really strong prescription pain medication. And that's when I started experimenting with medical marijuana. And I noticed, improved results. And, that kind of got me questioning our government and questioning everything as to what I was taught. I was a child in the 80s and the 90s, and I went through the DARE program, and I was taught all drugs are bad. Okay. And when I started questioning why we have a plant medicine that seems to work for me and anecdotally work for, thousands of other people, I basically became this YouTube cannabis activist, making music video parodies, promoting the legalization of marijuana. And that kind of put me on the map as this national cannabis activist.
And you kind of like to, from what I've observed online, so you tell me if this is accurate or not, I feel like you kind of like to conduct social experiments a little bit. I saw the video at the Miami Art Basel where you were selling art from your trench coat. So at some level, was founding the International Church of Cannabis like a hybrid of wanting to be a cannabis activist, but also like, this is an interesting experiment. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, I guess I have a propensity for trailblazing and pioneering new ideas. And, when I ran for mayor of Miami Beach in 2011, I ran as a YouTube comedian. And at the time, it was an unprecedented campaign, which is why it attracted international media attention. I was on the front page of the New York Times. I was in newspapers in China, Japan, Italy, France. Programs from all over the world were covering this crazy, pothead comedian that was running a campaign for the mayoralty of Miami Beach, but it didn't seem to be 100% serious. But at the same time, I had traction. I nearly won. I wouldn't say nearly won, but I had a respectable 30% of the vote on election day, running against a two-time incumbent, and it was that unorthodox trailblazing campaign, ironically, with a unusual campaign advisor who ended up becoming the campaign advisor for President Trump in his first campaign. It was this unusual approach to politics and life in general that, kind of led me down this path. And I don't think founding or co-founding the International Church of Cannabis was done deliberately because it was a unique, bucking the establishment type of experiment, as you so called it. But it certainly was attractive to me in that it had never been done before. There's never been a church, and there still isn't a church that you can legally consume cannabis in. So we're the first, and we're still the first and only church in the world that allows its congregation to consume cannabis during services. But that wasn't the reason why we did it. And it kind of just happened organically. It was never the goal to create a church of cannabis. It just kind of happened by accident.
And why a church? Why not a club or a bar or like a hookah lounge, but for weed?
Or like a group or like a men's club or something like that. Well, the reason is because of the property itself. I am a real estate investor, and my parents, or my mom specifically, always had a romantic idea of converting an old church into a home. There's something about the high ceilings and the stained glass and the architecture. And so I had been looking at churches for sale for years and never found the right one. And as you mentioned, I started a cannabis digital media company, and I happened to be in Denver, Colorado for the High Times Cannabis Cup. And for those that don't know, High Times, the magazine, the one from the 70s, threw these cannabis cups in Colorado that at the time I didn't realize how revolutionary they were, but it was just a giant festival of people smoking weed and doing dabs and in front of police, and there was no threat of prosecution. And I went in 2014 because I wanted to see it firsthand and I wanted to cover it for my media company. And at the time we had an influencer that we had signed to our company who was a YouTuber that smoked weed daily on YouTube and just talked about life. And I met him for breakfast at this little famous breakfast spot in Denver called Lucille's Creole Cafe. And we had breakfast there in the morning. And after breakfast, I drove down Logan Street, which had a giant church for sale. There was a big sign in front that said for sale. And I was curious, and I called up the number on the sign and I said, how much? And they said 1.3 million asking price. And it was a massive property. And I was like, that seems like not very much money for such a big property. And I looked into it. I scheduled a viewing. And the original idea in buying this old church was as a real estate investment to turn it into condos, or at the very worst, to turn it into a sick mega mansion for some professional athlete in Denver that would think it's cool to live in a church.
Okay. That is not at all what I expected you to say. That's interesting.
Truth be told, I bought this property not to make a church of cannabis. I bought this property as a real estate investment to turn it into a single family residence or a multifamily apartment building. And the church sat vacant for a year after we purchased it. And it was only when my startup cannabis digital media company, which was based in my garage in the house that I'm currently sitting in, it was when we worked as a company on Florida's medical marijuana referendum. And we tried to pass medical marijuana in 2014 in the state of Florida, and it failed by just 1.5 points.
I know.
And after it failed, our company and all of our employees, we looked at each other like, well, there's going to be no legal cannabis in Florida for at least 2 years, maybe longer. What are we doing here? You own a church in Denver where there's this robust recreationally legal cannabis market. Why don't we just go live in the church and, meet people in the industry and just move our company there? And it was that epiphany that, hey, we have this empty sitting property there. I'm not doing anything with it right now. 30 days later, we all moved. We were all living in this church together. There were 6 or 7 of us. And as we were living in the church, working on our, cannabis videos and, digital media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, we were like, well, what are we going to do with this church? We don't need a 13,000 square foot office for a 6-person company. What should we do? And all of the members of our company came from different religious backgrounds and faiths. And we thought, what if we formed a new church that wasn't dogmatic, that was not bound by a single book or, dogma. And instead, the common thread that bound the community together was the fact that we all use cannabis in our spiritual journeys. And so we looked into what it's like to create a 501c3 religious organization. We consulted with some attorneys and poof, we founded Elevationism.
Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. I want to officially invite you to take your mind travel to the next level with the Get Lost podcast hosted by Joe Sills. He's a travel journalist who interviews world-class explorers, like the folks you see on Discovery and Travel Channel. Each episode takes you on a new adventure in a new place. I especially like the episode Hostage in the Amazon. Add the Get Lost podcast with Joe Sills to your listen list today at getlostpod.com. Listen, if the last 2 years have given you a chronic eye twitch, you should consider trying medical marijuana. I highly recommend it. See what I did there? There's lots of ways for it to help you, so if you have questions and if you're the least bit curious, Google Empathic Practice Pensacola. It's the most non-intimidating way to get your medical card in Florida. Their in-house doctor and holistic support make them the easy choice. empathicpractice.us. If you've got backyard barbecue plans for 2022, but mosquitoes are not invited, I recommend Insect. I've been using their pest control service for several years now. They have a certified mosquito identification specialist on staff, and pollinator care is always top of mind. If you live in the Florida Panhandle or the Gulf Coast of Alabama, give them a call, ensec.net. The UWF Historic Trust. We shoot the show at the Pensacola Museum of History. It not only houses exhibits of lesser-known Pensacola history, it's an event space too. So if you need a unique space in downtown Pensacola for a fundraiser, networking event, or a corporate party, take a look at historicpensacola.org. And if you want to tour one of the 12 museums, get your tickets in person so you can show the agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. Get emails by texting REAL to 66866. Now back to the show. That's so cool. Okay, so tell me about your members, because when I think about a Church of Cannabis in Denver, Colorado, I think about disheveled hippies who are really happy and nice, who smell like patchouli. Is that like the archetype or is it a little bit broader?
Yeah, we have a really diverse congregation, members as young as 21 and members as old as mid 80s. And we have members who are religious and go to their regular church every single Sunday. And we have members that are agnostic and atheist or Buddhist or Jewish. I remember the first time we threw a Passover Seder, and we had 70 people show for our Bob Marley themed cannabis infused Passover Seder. And it was great. We celebrate all the holidays at our church, Jewish holidays, Christian holidays. We even celebrated Festivus, and we've celebrated Festivus every year for the past several years.
I'll be right over. No. That sounds amazing. I love it. So how does a person become a member of your church?
Yeah, so it's really easy. You go to our website, which if you Google International Church of Cannabis, is the first site that comes up, or you can go to elevationists.org. And there is a join button at the top of the website. You fill out a questionnaire, and you fill out the questions correctly. You get approved for membership, and you become on our email list. You're on our email list where you will get the invitations to all of our events and services.
And what do the services look like? Do you have like a Sunday morning service? Are there small groups?
So services pre-COVID and post-COVID are quite different. Before COVID, We had services every single week, Sunday evenings generally. And services consist of a different guest speaker and a different musical guest every week. So no two services were the same. The best way to describe it is think TED Talks meets MTV Unplugged. And you're allowed to bring your own cannabis into the church and consume. So we don't sell weed. We don't provide you with any weed. Before COVID, I mean, everybody shared and passed joints around in the chapel. After COVID, that's not happening. We strongly advise against people passing joints around. But yeah, services are less frequent now than they used to be. We're focusing more on quality over quantity. And because I'm no longer living full time in Denver, and neither are any of our co-founders, it's a little bit more, once a month, once every 4 to 6 weeks, and we throw a great service where our members can come.
And is there any plans to expand into multiple campuses? That's kind of, the business plan of most modern churches, is just plant one church and then expand to other campuses. Is that your plan, or is it just going to stay the one church?
Well, it wasn't the original plan. We just wanted to have a church and have a safe place for adults who use cannabis in their spiritual journey to have a home, to have a place where they could feel safe consuming the sacrament and praying if that's what they do, or being spiritual. Now that the church is successful, and when I say successful, I mean able to financially support itself. Now, the first couple of years, we had no business model. And, a lot of people go, oh, you created this church to be tax exempt and to not have to pay taxes. I'm like, yeah, but you need revenues to not pay taxes. Like, where are our revenues coming from? So we had donations were, maybe $100 a week, and that's not enough to pay your electric bill or your gas bill. So, since the church created the Beyond guided meditation and laser light show, and that's become such a large attraction in Denver. It's one of the top tourist attractions now in Denver. We're open 7 days a week. We do a show every single hour. Since that show was created, we now are sustainable and we're successful, and we can now pay salaries and pay our staff and no longer just be a volunteer-based church. And now that we have a proven business model, we are looking to expand into other cities. We're currently working on a Miami campus right now, and hopefully we'll have one in New York someday, one in LA, one in Amsterdam, one in Barcelona. But baby steps, one at a time. I'm happy that Denver is now able to support a small staff and create jobs and have better quality of speakers and services and musical guests and comedy shows. We are hoping to expand soon, but we haven't secured our next location yet.
That's totally exciting, though. I can't wait to hear what's next. You mentioned spiritual journey and cannabis. I didn't realize that throughout history, cannabis has been used for spiritual practices until preparing for our talk. And it's in Hinduism, it's listed as one of the 5 sacred plants in the Vedas. I didn't even realize it was mentioned in the Christian Bible. The Uyghur Muslims in China use it. I had no clue. So I was curious if you knew of any of the positive effects of specifically cannabis use for the members of your congregation. Do you have any testimonies?
Well, and this is kind of a major facet of elevationism, is that elevationism is unique to your personal journey. We don't tell you how to go down that journey. We don't tell you when to smoke, how to consume, whether it's smoking, eating it, vaping it. We don't tell you how often. We don't tell you which God to pray to. We don't even tell you, what makes us unique as a religion is that we don't pretend to know the answers to life's great questions. So elevationism is really about your individual spiritual journey, and that is left for you to interpret and for you to experience on your own. We try to bring in a diverse array of speakers to share their experiences with our congregation and hope that our congregation can learn a nugget of wisdom from every single speaker. But there's, anecdotally, sure, I've heard tons of our members tell us how it helps them on their journey, how they've found themselves, how they've been able to be more understanding, patient, all of the positive effects of cannabis. However, we don't have a unifying way or kind of practice of elevationism. It's really up to you and your individual journey.
And what about you? Do you have any specific examples of how cannabis has helped you spiritually?
Yeah, sure. The idea of elevationism is how to be the best version of you. It's about elevating yourself to a better version of self. Cannabis has helped me be a better person. And so, the one golden rule that we have in elevationism is treat others how you want to be treated. It's the golden rule. It's very simple, right? So it's helped me be more kind, more patient, more forgiving, more understanding. And it's helped me think outside the box. I didn't really start doing stand-up comedy until I started smoking weed.
Really?
I didn't become a successful entrepreneur until I tapped into portions of my brain and problem solving that I was not able to tap into before I became a cannabis user. So, that's one of the things that, Richard Branson taught me is think outside the box. And, he was instrumental in my breaking down the square confines of my entrepreneurial thinking. And, look at the Church of Cannabis. It's something completely unique. It's something that never would have been created if I hadn't experimented with, cannabis use. And so for me, it has turned me into a better Steve Berke. And that's what elevationism is all about, is being the best version of you possible.
I love that. I can definitely share that sentiment of marijuana making me a better version of myself. So definitely experiencing different aspects of my mental state that I realize I can tap into even while sober to some extent. So it's really a great launching point for, as you said, creativity, and for me, being present, and all kinds of things. I'm curious what you think about in the cannabis industry in general. I'm sure you've seen that dispensaries are kind of leaning towards stronger products, like the mellow stuff isn't really, it's kind of hard to find, it's getting stronger and stronger. And I'm wondering if you feel like this could be an error to the benefit of cannabis being all those things you just said, and instead exchanging it for a one-dimensional escape of just getting stoned.
Yeah, I do think it's an error, actually. I have a pretty strong opinion about this. In Colorado, there's a very evolved recreational market. And I would say over the past 5 years, the percentage of market share of dabs and shatter and wax has grown, and the percentage of flower has gone down as far as market share is concerned. And in order for cannabis to be accepted in the mainstream, I think cannabis users need to be very cognizant of perception, right? Perception, how we're perceived by the soccer mom that's in Ohio that's worried about their kid getting hooked on drugs, right? And when you have like dab rigs with blowtorches and people heating up these things of wax, like, I'm not saying that wax isn't good for some people. Some people may need stronger levels of THC, but the perception to somebody who's not familiar with cannabis is you look like a crackhead, right?
Totally.
And so we were very, very aware of being new as a church and being perceived negatively in the media and how that could really defeat or harm our mission. Our mission is to normalize cannabis and spirituality. So we do not allow dab rigs inside the church during our services because it's a bad look. And we don't, condemn anybody for using dabs or for, consuming wax or shatter or highly concentrated THC. But in order to make this movement more appealing to, listen, yes, we've leaps and bounds in America as far as cannabis, but look at Europe, look at Eastern European countries that are, and look at Asia. In order for this to become globally recognized, everybody always looks at America as the leader. But if 2020 or 60 Minutes is doing a story on weed and they show these people with these, blow torches and, I've seen people do a dab and their eyes roll into the back of their head and pass out. I've seen it. The first time I did dabs, it was way too strong for me. And so I do think it's important for the perception of the cannabis user to become normalized. And I do think the highly concentrated THC is bad for business and bad for the normalization of the industry.
I would agree with you 100%.
I actually think lights would be a great, like Marlboro lights. Like there needs to be light weed.
Okay, Steve, this is your next assignment.
Yeah,
I need to see it.
I'm on it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Because I think the idea of having, I have a couple friends who have no tolerance, but they want to be outside smoking a joint with their friends.
Yeah.
But they take one hit and they're high.
Exactly.
So can we make a joint that is, 1/5 or 1/10 the strength so that they can smoke the whole joint, but it be the equivalent of 1 or 2 hits off of a 20% or 25% THC strain weed?
Yes, thank you. Let me know. Let me know when you make that, because I live in Pensacola, Florida. I think we got I don't know, we'll say 40,000 people in our population. And I think we have 8 dispensaries. That feels like a lot. And I'm for it. I love the variety, but almost none of them carry low THC products, which is at the beginning they did. And that is what I began to love, because it really helps me stay focused and it helps quiet my busy mind. And now I have to make my own with CBD I get from the vitamin shop, because the weed stores don't even sell regular CBD. And then I have to mix it with the THC drops. And so it's like, okay, now I have to do this at home in my kitchen. It'd be so nice to just have the equivalent of, one of those seltzer beers, but in weed. And so I could hang out with my friends, and it's not me worrying that I'm going to overdo it and be the one that's too high to participate in conversation.
Yeah, I think, the industry right now is catering to very regular users. Eventually, as it opens up, there's going to have to be some entry-level products, because you're not going to have people continuing to experiment with cannabis if they get too high their first couple times and have negative experiences. So I'd love to see the market eventually address that hole in the industry. And I think it will. I think, capitalism, they'll find a way. But right now you're seeing a shift in going after people who consume a lot of cannabis and they just want higher and higher levels of THC. And I don't necessarily think that's, I think everything needs balance, right? 1 glass of wine a day, super healthy for your heart. 9 glasses of wine a day, you might be an alcoholic. So, you need to find the yin and the yang. And I think it's very important, not just with cannabis, but with anything, too much sugar, too much, sex, too much exercise, anything in one direction or the other can be unhealthy.
Well, maybe if you write a parody song and put it on YouTube, that's the beginning, right?
Yeah, that's my previous life.
As we wrap up, will you tell people where they can stay in touch with the church, how they can visit and stay in touch with all of your many not boring endeavors?
Well, the best way to stay in touch and follow what the church is doing is to just go to our website, elevationist.org, or just Google International Church of Cannabis. Join our email list. You'll get awesome emails. We do monthly comedy shows. We do yoga. We do all kinds of special events and fun things. And eventually we might, start broadcasting our services on YouTube and Facebook. We're not quite there yet. But yeah, we're online. We're on Instagram at Church of Cannabis. We're on Facebook. If you find us on Facebook, we're there. And, stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be coming to a city near you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. This is great.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you loved a couple episodes of the show, I'd be so grateful if you could let others know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Just share where you're listening from and why you liked a certain episode. And if you liked this episode, you'll also like the one with the police officer's wife who became a cannabis patient. That's episode 65. Stay tuned next week when I kick off my 2022 Love and Relationship series with a professional cuddler. Talk to you then.